4, 3, 2, 1. The Voice of Stockton. For more information on The Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
This is KBCC 89.5 FM, Tracy, California, Peace and Justice Network of San Joaquin.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS The Voice of Stockton or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
Welcome to another amazing episode of the Phone Booth here on The Voice of San Joaquin. My name is Edward Heitman, and joining me as always my good friend and co-host Brian Rodriguez. Hello. How you doing today, man?
Pretty good.
Good to hear. Now, if you are a first-time viewer or listener to the Phone Booth, we are a show that's completely dedicated to the world of pop culture. Anything from movies to video games to TV shows to comic books, you name it, and we'll do our very best to cover it. Now, we do have a bit of a special episode today, and because of this episode, we do have to give a little bit of a warning. Very specifically to those of you out there who might not have been able to watch the superhero epic known as Avengers ENDGAME.
Yes, we will be doing a review at the end of the episode that will be spoiling the entire thing, and we will give you another warning before we start doing it. It'll be at the end of the episode, it'll be the last thing we do, so you can leave and not worry about missing anything.
Yes, because last week's episode, we were able to basically cover a timeline a little bit, We were able to cover a little bit of the events that happened from Iron Man all the way up to Infinity War, but we were waiting to talk about Endgame until the very end of today's episode. So until then, we're just going to save our review on Endgame for the very end. But that's not the only important thing about today's episode. We actually want to talk about what day it is specifically today. Today happens to be May 4th, known as, May the 4th, as in May the 4th be with you and whatnot. A very popular holiday to anybody out there who is a fan of the Star Wars franchise. Yeah, So we'll start off with our weekly recap, where we'll talk about any little bits of news topics that have happened within the week. We got some major news topics, but it's still kind of a slow week, what with Endgame, still dominating all the pop culture sites and whatnot. There's not really too much for us to talk about, but we do have some stuff to share with you. And I'll start first. So aside from it being May the 4th, it is also officially Free Comic Book Day today. One of my favorite holidays of the year, I'll be honest with you. Stop by your local comic book store to check out their offerings, and remember to buy something while you're there. While we get the comics for free, the shops have to buy these comics. Now, if you haven't celebrated Free Comic Book Day before in the past, what it is basically is that comic book stores all over will have special Free Comic Book Day editions of various, comic book lines. Usually Marvel. Sometimes they go a little bit outside of the staple trademarks with like Rick and Morty comic books and things like that. But what it is essentially is that you walk in, you get your free comic books, free of charge, and you leave and everything. How long has Free Comic Book Day been going on for anyways?
Oh, I'm not even sure how long. I think it's been over a decade now. Maybe. I'm not actually sure how old it is.
Yeah, but it's a good holiday nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to make sure we let everybody out there know. I definitely want to swing by Al's Comics right after today's episode. It's right next to us here on the Miracle Mile. Anybody who's in the area, be sure to check out the place, get some comic books, your free comic book editions and your paid comics, Al's a good guy, and I want to make sure that he gets some decent business going on, especially today of all days.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, Brian, I'll pass along the news over to you.
Epic has purchased Rocket League developer Psyonix. They have intimated that Rocket League will be removed from Steam because of this and added exclusively to the Epic store later on down the line. The deal isn't complete yet. We've still got, I think about a week before it closes. Now, of course, this has not gone over well with Rocket League fans. Because when Epic ever do anything that actually goes over well. So, there has been a negative review bombing going on of Rocket League on Steam. There have been 2,700 negative reviews added since the announcement, though it still has an overwhelmingly positive rating. And I'm not sure if that's just because of how many good reviews it has, or maybe because it's Steam's new anti-review bombing system in effect. I'm not sure. I don't think this is as bad as it could be, because it's not like they're just taking it off of Steam. Steam copies will no longer work. They're not supporting the Steam version anymore. They will still be supporting the Steam version. They'll be keeping servers up. It'll be, if you already own it on Steam, and I believe you can still buy it on Steam, it'll be like it was. It's essentially just moving to a different storefront. It's not like Metro Exodus where you pre-ordered it on Steam, or where it was, where it was promised to be on Steam, and then they pull the wool out from under you and say, no, you have to buy it on Epic. Rocket League's been out for quite a few years now. I think its main buying window has passed, and it still gets sales, but it is not, the smash hit it once was. Still fun, but it's not as big. I remember, God, how old is it? It's at least 4 years now, because I remember they had Superman, Batman, Dawn of Justice DLC at one point.
Oh, gosh.
You could get the weird Batmobile from that, though pretty much every Batmobile has been pretty weird.
Yeah, that's true. Since we're talking about the whole Epic Games thing with Rocket League, there was a particular topic that I don't think we were able to discuss with last week's episode, given the fact that we were focusing specifically on the Marvel timeline. Would you mind talking a little bit about the ultimatum Epic Games has given Steam recently regarding their exclusivity thing? Yes,
so Epic founder and CEO Tim Sweeney has said that Epic will back off the, aggressive buying of exclusives if Steam matches their 88% cut to developers, down from, I believe, Steam's at a 70% for developers right now. Mm-hmm. Now, this seems like complete and utter bullpucky.
Yeah.
Because why... Just think of it from a business perspective. If Epic encourages Steam to match their price point, why would that make them back off exclusives? One of their biggest things is the price point, so they need to keep buying exclusives to stay competitive over Steam. It's not like they just see Steam going, oh, they're being more competitive, guess we should back off and no more competition. I guess that's not how anything works in capitalism, like, at all. I mean, this is just really Tim Sweeney trying to lord it over Steam, because they know Steam's not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. The way I see it, this whole thing is like a giant publicity stunt for Epic in order to try and get more customers to go to their site. Think about it. You have your opponent that you're telling everybody you're so much better than these people, and people are going to stop buying from Steam, and you're going to start buying from you now because you're so much better. And some people are 50-50 on it. So tell your opponent, okay, we'll back off a little bit if you start giving people way more money than you usually give people, which will affect your profits entirely. Of course, your opponent's going to say no. And a lot of people who are hearing about this won't see it from a business perspective. They'll just see it as, oh, Steam doesn't want to give up some of their money. Those guys are total jerks. Now I'm really going to go over to the Epic store. That's what this whole thing is. This is them trying to make Epic look way better than Steam. Trying to make Steam look even more of a bad guy. Even though Steam's already kind of in that position, Epic's starting to fall into that position as well, because they're trying so hard to make themselves look like the good guy in this.
Yeah. Also, there's one thing I forgot to put in the script that I also want to talk about, and it's in regards to Borderlands 3.
Yes. Oh, gosh.
Now, recently had a gameplay reveal trailer, and the gameplay looks great. It looks like Borderlands at its best. There have been a number of great improvements to graphics and gameplay. You can mantle over things. That's all great. Yeah. However, one thing people notice in it is when Claptrap appears, his voice is different. Almost like he has a completely different voice actor. Well, it turns out that's because he does. Because David Eddings, who has voiced Claptrap in the past 4 iterations of Borderlands, including Tales, will not be playing Claptrap because for the first time, he asked that Gearbox pay him for his work. Now, the reason they didn't do this beforehand was because Gearbox employees have a clause in their contract that says they have to do voice work for the games with no extra pay, basically, as employees. It's why one of the new villains, Tyrene, is voiced by one of the people in their media management department, I believe. However, David Eddings left Gearbox between the production of pre-sequel and now 3. I'm not sure what his status was for Tales because that was handled by Gearbox, so they may have paid him for that. But apparently, with their, Epic exclusivity deal and that chunk of money, along with the extra 12% they'll be making from PC sales, apparently they just couldn't find the money to pay the voice actor for their most iconic character. Just wasn't in the budget, apparently.
And, I find that really messed up. This guy just wanted to get paid for his work.
Yeah, and
That's just it. It's just, I do the voice for this character all the time, and I've been doing it fine. You didn't have to pay me, but, it would be nice if you guys could pay me for it, and they're just, no, we can't do that. What are you talking about? You're crazy.
Yeah, and it's just, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the voice actor replacing him works at Gearbox. And while he does do a decent job and does sound like him, it is still a noticeable difference, which is just every time, and I talked about this, every time I get excited for this game, there's something about the behind-the-scenes action. The game itself looks great, but behind the scene, it's clear every decision was made to maximize profit over artistic integrity. Do we want to hire the well-known voice actor that defined this character? No, let's replace him with employees who may do a great job, but this has happened twice so far with both Claptrap and Reese.
Mm-hmm.
And while Reese is actually not being voiced by an employee, he's being voiced by by an actual professional voice actor. The voice actor is still fairly new to the industry and probably costs less. And it just feels like, with that and the meltdown Randy Pitchford had on Twitter, which I'm not going to get into, you can look it up elsewhere. It just
honestly didn't even know he had a meltdown on
Twitter.
Twitter.
It was an entire thing. He's upset that game journalists aren't just free PR for him, and this has been a thing with him for a while now. Is he attacks any game journalist that doesn't, just promote his game for free. Anyway, you can look that up online. I'm not going to get into it, but I just wanted to let people know that, yeah, Claptrap has a different voice because Gearbox won't pay a voice actor to voice him. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing with Borderlands 3. As excited as we are about Borderlands 3, as Brian said, every single time we get something amazing with gameplay or anything like that, we end up with some behind-the-scenes stuff that just makes you go from very, very hyped to just mildly excited for the game to come out, and that sucks, because Borderlands is a great game series, and, I'm still looking forward to 3, but unfortunately not as much as I used to be.
They just need to get Randy Pitchford to shut his mouth.
Honestly.
Anyways,
on to the next little topic here. Now, if you've been watching the show for a while, you might know that among many superhero films that have been dealing with delays, one of which have been the Gambit movie, another film that has been dealing with a lot of delays is The Batman. The film that was supposed to originally star Ben Affleck's rendition of the Batman before he just quit the role entirely.
Yeah.
And there has been a number of reasons as to why it keeps getting pushed back. Most recently, it was the whole concern over trying to find a Batman to replace Ben Affleck's Batman. But now it would seem as though the Batman has been pushed back to early 2020 due to script revisions.
Filming has been pushed back to early 2020. We have no idea what the release date is at this point.
Yeah, and you know what? It's real unfortunate. When you think about it, it seems like Ben Affleck's Batman, he probably could have done a really good job. It's the only cinematic Batman that we've gotten that has not had his own individual film.
Yeah, and there have been ideas going around and hints at it for a while now. Like, I remember back, I think, as Superman Batman was coming out, there was a video online of Joe Manganiello playing Deathstroke, and apparently it was going to be based off the same storyline that Arkham Origins was based off of, where it's Batman hunting down 12 different assassins in one night, which would be really great. It was supposed to focus more on his detective work than on the super beat-em-ups that some of the previous films have been. And now Ben Affleck's out, and we don't know if this movie's going to be part of the DCEU. We don't even know if Joe Manganiello is still attached as Deathstroke. I hope he is, because he was both A, in Justice League at the end, and B, I love Deathstroke.
I've heard speculation that Deathstroke might not even be the villain in the Batman now. It might actually be the Penguin instead.
Yeah, which, it's, again, one of those instances of DC casting someone before they actually have an idea of what to do with them in a movie. Like, remember when they cast Dwayne Johnson, like back in 2014 when they cast Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam for Shazam?
Yeah, and then he ended up not being the villain for Shazam, and now he's supposedly going to be Black Adam, but now we have no idea when he's going to be Black Adam.
Yeah.
It's confusing. But, it is real unfortunate that the Batman's being delayed, because from everything that I've heard is that this movie could be great. It could be a really, really good movie, especially if they are focusing specifically on Batman's detective skills. That's something we never got to see in Batman movies. We see him do a little bit of, sneaking around, looking at, some little bit of broken glass or something, but it always immediately followed up to an epic beat-em-up brawl against a bunch of nameless henchmen. You know?
Typically any detective work was him finding something at a crime scene, showing it to Alfred, and then Alfred in the Bat computer figuring out what it is. So he didn't actually do a lot of detective work on his own.
Yeah, I was hoping it was going to be a lot like Batman Year One, when the first time he starts off as Batman, and we get to see him really put his detective skills to use before he has the arsenal of just pull out random gadgets out of your belt to solve everything,
Shark repellent.
Shark repellent. That's immediately what I was thinking of, too. Shark repellent. So, even though it's still technically on the table, I'm still very tempted to say rest in peace, the Batman. I hope eventually it does get worked on, Anyways, Brian, go ahead and take it away to the next topic.
So Child of Light, the 2014 Ubisoft RPG, it got decent reviews. It had a very indie 2D platformer feel to it. It was a cute little game. So when a Switch port was announced, it was also teased that there would be a sequel coming, as it was literally that there was a Switch blocking a piece of paper that said Child of Light 2 on it as part of the announcement. However, apparently that sequel is not actually in production. According to the game's creator, Ubisoft is currently more focused on the games as service model from things like really everything they're putting out right now. Division 2, Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six Siege, For Honor. That's just all their games. Anyway, they are apparently more focused on that because, let's face it, it's extremely profitable. And the Child of Light 2 is apparently not on their priority list, even though they teased it, which is weird.
It is weird, From what I heard, Child of Light was a very good Ubisoft game. I enjoyed it personally from the little bits of gameplay that I had seen and everything. So it's weird when it's teased that there would be a sequel and eventually nothing ever happens.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
It was one of those weird games you get from AAA developers that feel like an indie game, like Unravel from EA and A Way Out, also from EA. It's their weird sort of token indie games that end up being, amazing, but they don't invest in because they don't make all of the money. They just make some of the money.
I don't know. But hopefully, eventually we do get a sequel. Or if anything, something to compensate for it. To wrap up our news bit for the week, we unfortunately have some bad news. A Star Wars alumni, in case you haven't heard, has recently passed away this week. Peter Mayhew, the guy who did the voice of Chewbacca.
And the bodywork for Chewbacca up until, I think, The Last Jedi?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. He recently passed away this Tuesday.
Yes. Now, we don't really know the details, but we know he was with his family at the time. He was, this wasn't sudden. This was somewhat expected, it seems. And we'll miss him.
We will miss him very much.
There have been outpourings from Star Wars fans, actors, creators, you name it. And it's going to be sad.
It's going to be very sad. I have to admit, when I found out that he had passed away, I was very afraid that it wasn't really going to be very well acknowledged. Because he is a Star Wars alumni, but not many people know of Peter Mayhew as much as they would know, say,
Mark Hamill,
or anybody like that. So I was afraid that people were going to find out that he had passed away and it wasn't made too big of a deal. And I'm very glad to know that people really are pouring their hearts out. Everybody recognizes him and they all miss him and everything, and I miss him too. Because as much as people like to imitate the voice, Peter Mayhew, he had his own little thing going with Chewbacca and everything.
It's very distinctive.
As much as everybody tries to do Chewbacca, he can only do Chewbacca the classic way and everything.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very unfortunate to see that he had passed and everything. You know, so rest in peace, Mr. Mayhew. You will be missed. Well, with that being said,
on that somber note,
we wrap up the weekly recap. And now we're going to enter trailer talk. In this segment, Brian and I like to talk about some of the latest trailers to have dropped within, the week and give our personal opinion on it and everything. And we only have 2 trailers to talk about, and we're going to start off with the first one because the second one will eventually just trail off right into our discussion panels for today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first trailer that we have is for Crawl. The U.S. release date is July 12th, 2019, starring Kea Sodalario, Barry Pepper, and many others. The synopsis is that a young woman who becomes trapped in a flooding house during a Category 5 hurricane must battle against Florida's most savage and feared predator, alligators. Directed by Alexandre Aja. Now, in case you haven't been able to catch it, this is but with alligators.
See, this movie's dumb, but it's not the kind of dumb I wanted it to be. When I first saw the poster, I thought it was going to be people up against a super alligator. But it turns out it's just someone up against a bunch of regular alligators in a house, which still really, really dumb and probably going to be fun to watch. But it isn't quite the Meg like I thought it was going to be from the poster.
Yeah, and that's true. When I saw the trailers for this movie, my apologies, for this movie, I admit at first it seemed a little interesting. Somebody trapped in a house, there's an alligator in there, the water's rising so the alligator can get anywhere. The plot doesn't sound that bad, It sounds at least short film material at most, in my opinion. But then you actually see the alligator bite people, right? And if this isn't the most sci-fi Shark Week CGI stuff I have ever seen, man. Like, my God. And one of the interesting things, too, is that this film is from the mind of Sam Raimi.
He's at least a producer on
Yes.
it. We're not sure how much actual creative involvement he has in it, but it's still weird to see Sam Raimi's name attached to something like this.
It is, considering that I know him personally for his original Spider-Man trilogy when that had come out and everything. So it's interesting to hear about this film. I have to admit.
Yeah.
So if anything,
it'll probably still be dumb, I guess, but it's not the kind of dumb I wanted from it.
If anything, it makes a good popcorn movie.
Yeah.
That can be said. It'd make a decent popcorn movie. Now, without further ado, it is time for us to talk about the first trailer to Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, this is going to be a long one, so strap in.
Yes. Now, the U.S. release date is November 8th, 2019.
For now.
Yeah, starring Jim Carrey, James Meriden, Neil McDonough, and many others. The synopsis is that a cop in the rural town of Green Hills will help Sonic escape from the government, who is looking to capture him. And this is directed by Jeff Fowler.
Okay. Okay. Manhog. Sonic looks just horrifying in this. They gave him realistic human proportions, which is one of the worst things you can do to Sonic, apparently, because it just looks horrible. It's hard to put into words without being able to show what this looks like.
They gave him teeth.
They gave him human teeth. They gave him human teeth in a realistic body. Like in the cartoon, sometimes he has human teeth, but that's, it works with the cartoon. But when he looks like a lab accident went wrong. He looks like what would happen if Jeff Goldblum had been fused with a hedgehog instead of a fly.
You know what? And that's what I've always been telling people, too. It looks like what would happen if somebody would happen to have been holding a hedgehog while getting hit by a gamma nuclear blast, and they just happened to fuse together. Because the very first shot we get of Sonic standing on the street getting ready to run, from that perspective when he's just standing there bouncing on his feet,
stretching,
it's fine. But when he's stretching, that's when it looks like some person wearing a hedgehog suit. And oh my God, my mom actually thinks that Sonic looks okay in this movie.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think your mom's wrong.
But you know something? One of the good things about this trailer so far is that Jim Carrey is amazing as Dr. Eggman.
Yeah,
Okay?
I wouldn't say he's on par with the Eggman we've seen in other games, but it's Jim Carrey essentially being Jim Carrey, which is wildly entertaining.
In fact, I'd go so far as to say he's the most Jim Carrey he's ever been in a good handful of years. He reminds me in this trailer a lot of like his old school Ace Ventura and Mask style Jim Carrey, you know, which we haven't seen in a while because he's been focusing a lot more on the serious Oscar-worthy roles lately.
Yeah, and it feels like at the beginning of the movie, they're really trying to invert what we think of Eggman. He's got, hair on the top of his head, tiny, square glasses, a trimmed mustache. But then at the very end of the trailer, we get to see what seems like some sort of flash forward of him. When he's gone bald, he has his distinctive, round goggle glasses and that glorious mustache.
Glorious mustache. Now, we did get to see a little bit of him evolving into Eggman before the end of the trailer, where he does have the goggles. One of them seems to have been busted and everything, but he is donning the red jacket that Eggman wears and everything. So, Jim Carrey, he is the one thing I am excited for about this movie. Now, This trailer happens to be a very special incident, ladies and gentlemen, because something happened after this trailer that we don't usually see happen after a trailer drops. The way that Sonic looks has been rejected so badly by the public, Sega itself included, that they now have to completely redesign the way Sonic looks in this movie.
Yes, the director, Jeff Fowler, has said on Twitter that they have heard the feedback and that they will be redesigning Sonic in the movie. And we don't know how, or how, if it'll be a complete overhaul, if it'll just be some touch-ups. But we do know that they have yet to push back the release date of the movie. So right now, animators have 6 months to completely change every frame of the movie with Sonic in it. And that is, we've talked a lot about crunch in the game industry, but it happens in every industry, really. And can you imagine that? Can you imagine changing the model of your character in every frame of a movie? That is just...
It's insane.
Especially when it looks as realistic as it does. Like, there are individual fibers of hair on him that are moving. And that's just... On the one hand, I don't like the design of Sonic. On the other hand, I don't like it, so I won't go see the movie. I don't feel the need for it to change. I think it should have never gotten to this point. But we're at this point now, and I think we should just sort of accept that that's what this is going to be. I don't think it's fair to, force a team of animators to crunch themselves into oblivion to fix this.
Yeah, I do have to admit, having to force animators to enter crunch in order to repair this would be very unfortunate, considering the fact that they seem to have had enough of it made at least to release trailers.
Yeah.
And you were talking to me about this like a day or so ago. They already might have marketing stuff already made for the original looking Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, by this point they would have sent out design books, basically design bibles for what Sonic looks like in the movie to companies producing all their merchandise, the toys, the action figures, the commemorative plates, whatever there's going to be for this movie. It's a kids movie. They're going to try to sell toys. And most of this has probably already gone into some phase of production. And it's 6 months out, so they're going to have to change everything, probably lose a bunch of money on the scrap production to change this. And it's going to cost, they need to delay the movie. They need to get more time.
They really do. I'm amazed that they haven't pushed the date back yet. It's as simple as that. Give yourself a year at most. Just give yourself a year to get this fixed. That's usually what other production companies do. When they hit a roadblock and they need to get this done, they'll push it a year. People might not be entirely pleased with this, but it's only the proper thing to do.
Yeah, I know they want this, entire, fall, winter, holiday season release, which will be lucrative in most aspects, but push it to May of next year. Because so far, we don't have a Marvel movie taking up that spot. So right now, it might actually be a good idea to move it to Labor Day or something like that. Mm-hmm. A, it buys you more time, and B, it's still a fairly lucrative spot to, release your movie.
Yeah.
Another 5-6 months? that, you know, give your animators a year. I mean, it's still a lot of work, but still, it'll give them something.
Yeah, it won't be as bad of a crunch, I at least I think. But yeah, so I would suggest while you have the opportunity to save the trailer, the first trailer to Sonic the Hedgehog the way he looks now, because we predict that once they do a new redesign for Sonic, they're probably going to scrub that trailer clean, try their best to get it offline.
I'm surprised they haven't done it yet.
I'm surprised they haven't done it yet either. I know I made sure to save my copy of the first trailer, and
So
I'm
did
holding
I.
on to it. You know, I eventually do want to try and get a review done on Sonic the Hedgehog once it comes out. But yeah, about does it for trailer talk, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we've reached the end of today's episode. This is where we will give you a warning. We are about to talk about Avengers Endgame.
Okay, let's give them a spoiler countdown.
Yeah.
Let's go 10,
9,
8,
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I somehow completely miscounted and still had a finger up. Anyway, you've had your countdown now, and my entire thing about not knowing how to count on my fingers, apparently.
At this point in time, it'd be best for you to go do something else, turn down your speaker, or whatever have you, because now we're going to talk a bit about Avengers Endgame. Now, Brian, since you're a lot better at describing films than I am, I'll let you take it away for now.
Okay, so the movie starts out pretty much immediately after the end of Infinity War. It takes place, I believe it was 23 days after Thanos' snap. Tony Stark and Nebula are on the Guardian ship, sort of stranded in space. They've run out of supplies, they're running out of air, and they're trying to make it home. And they don't quite make it until, out of the blue, Captain Marvel shows up and just sort of carries the ship home. They don't really explain how she got there. I mean, it's explained in the after credit scene for Captain Marvel, but if you hadn't seen that yet, you wouldn't really know. But yeah, she's there. So essentially, what the Avengers on Earth have been doing for the past 23 days is trying to find where Thanos is. And they finally got a break where they get a similar energy signature to the snap occurring on this planet out in the middle of nowhere. And they don't know what's happening, so they go out there, they manage to capture Thanos, they cut off his arm that has the Infinity Gauntlet on it, only to discover that that energy surge was Thanos using the stones to destroy the stones to keep anyone from reversing what he did. So the snap is permanent, and Thor cuts off Thanos' head.
Well, right after Thanos says, in very dramatic fashion, mind you, I am inevitable.
Yes. And Thor, like he should have done in Infinity War, went for the head. So after that, everything is pretty much screwed. We also get a little bit of Hawkeye losing his entire family to the snap.
At the very beginning.
Yeah, that part was really hard to watch.
It really was. They were just gone. You didn't even get to see them turn to dust. They was just gone.
Yeah, he turns around, looking for his daughter. You see this dust blowing in the wind. He turns around looking for his kids and his wife, and there's just this little bit of dust you can see blowing away. There's no music playing. It's just... God, that was a good scene. That was well done.
Very well done.
Anyway, so now we flash forward 5 years into the future. It's been 5 years, and humanity seems to have somewhat adapted to 3.5 billion people disappearing at once. We see Captain America is leading a sort of therapy support group for people, sort of telling them that they have to find a way to move on. There's this one guy that went on a date, and they apparently both broke down at one point, because even if you tell someone to move on, how do you move on from something like this?
But then we get Ant-Man.
Yes.
Now, if you've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, you would know that right before the snap happens, Scott Lang uses the Ant-Man suit to go through the quantum portal to enter the quantum realm, a dimension that exists outside of time and space. And just as he went in there, Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, and Hope Van Dyne all disappeared from the snap. So he's been stuck inside the quantum realm for 5 years now, but he didn't know that it's been 5 years because the rules between the quantum realm and reality time is completely different.
Yeah, he was in there for, he said, 5 hours.
Yes. So his van that contains the portal gets towed, I guess.
Yep.
And it's been kept up in this little fenced-off area for a while. And of all things, a rat accidentally activates the portal again and sends Scott Lang flying out of the quantum portal.
Yeah, I want to point out, because they never really acknowledge it in the movie, but that rat saved the universe.
It really did. The fact that the entire universe was saved from a rat, of all things, man.
Yeah. A rat broke into the van and accidentally stepped on a button that ejected him. That rat saved the universe. And I think we should acknowledge that unnamed rat.
We should acknowledge it, the true Avenger in this movie.
Yes. So, after Ant-Man figures out what's happened, he goes to the Avengers compound in New York with an idea. A time heist. A time heist. Where they would essentially use the quantum particles, the Pym particles, to go subatomic and travel back in time. Which, sure. So they take this idea to Iron Man, who in the 5 years has had a daughter with Pepper Potts, well, Morgan, and is relatively happy. I mean, he's, a loving father. He's got this sort of ideal life living on a lakeside, and he is vehemently against the time heist and reversing what happened because he doesn't want to lose his daughter. So the idea is to go back in time, retrieve the Infinity Stones, come back to the future, snap everyone back while leaving the last 5 years the same way they were, and then return the Infinity Stones to their timeline. Because this movie has some complicated rules for time travel that they say are the ones that work. All the movies like Back to the Future and Time Cop and this and that, oh, those rules don't work. So, of course, these rules for time travel don't work at all, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, the way that the time kind of works from what we've gathered in Endgame is that if they go back in time and they take the stone, it won't affect their timeline specifically. But as they leave, that particular point in time creates a new timeline, one where the Infinity Stone never existed. And that would ruin that timeline, which is when they come up with the idea that if they were to take the stone, go into the future, use the stones to reverse the snap, then go back into time to that specific point in time that the stone was removed and put it right back where it was, it would prevent any other timelines from being destroyed. Even though we're told that we're not affecting any timelines at all when we're traveling through time.
Yeah, it's...
For an Avengers movie, their time theories are way too complicated, while they're also trying to say our way is the only way time travel really works.
Yeah, they act like it's this revolutionary thing no other movie's done. They've got branching timelines, and that's what they've got, essentially. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they gather the remaining Avengers, including Rocket Raccoon and Nebula and Thor, who's become a depressed alcoholic, sort of the leader of New Asgard, which is the city in Norway with the few remaining Asgardians. He's become depressed since he blames himself for not killing Thanos before he did the snap, which I'd argue he's not really responsible for. He's nowhere near as bad as Star-Lord.
Don't hate on Star-Lord.
It's his fault.
It is not his fault.
They almost had the... And you know what? I'm not getting into this argument again. Anyway, moving on. So they get the Avengers together. They find Hawkeye, who's become sort of a homicidal murderer, killing gang members that managed to survive Thanos' snap.
Yeah, he was now Ronin after the snap.
They never call him that in the movie. It's like how they said that in Infinity War, Captain America was Nomad, even though they never make any reference to it. It's this weird thing they keep doing. I don't know why. Just, if you're not going to call him that in the movie, it's confusing.
Yeah, that's true.
So they managed to determine the best points to pick up the Infinity Stones. So the first three they get are the Mind, Time, and Space Stones. The Tesseract, Loki's Staff, and Doctor Strange's Amulet. So they have a group go back to 2012 during the events of the original Avengers to get the stones from that point. They also send a team to 2014 during the events of Guardians of the Galaxy to get the Power Stone from Morag, which is where, Guardians starts with Peter Quill getting the Power Stone, and the Soul Stone from Vermeer, like we saw in Infinity War. Mm-hmm. And then there's one final team that goes to Asgard during the events of Thor the Dark World, which is a movie I never thought they'd acknowledge again, to get the Reality Stone from Jane Foster, which... Eventually, they manage to get most of the stones. Thor gets a heart-to-heart with his dead mother while Rocket Raccoon attacks Natalie Portman and sort of suctions the stone out of her. They never really explain it because I think they couldn't think of a way that wasn't horrifying to look at.
Yeah.
While on however, not everything goes according to plan. In New York, the team of Captain America, Iron Man, Ant-Man, and the Hulk. The Hulk manages to convince the Ancient One, who's still alive at this point, to give him the stone by essentially saying that Doctor Strange saw this as the only way it would work, and she handed it over because she believed in him, which I thought was going to go in a very different direction. I thought it was going to create a branching timeline of where this causes her not to trust Strange, so it causes an entire...
Well, her excuse was that, like, he was destined to save all dimensions or timelines or whatever, so if Stephen Strange thought it was the right choice to give them the time stone, then it must be the right decision no matter what, because he's destined to be the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yes, so Captain America manages to get Loki's staff away from S.H.I.E.L.D. by pretending to be a Hydra agent to some of the other Hydra agents we got that were revealed in Captain America Winter Soldier, and then has a fight with his past self who believes he's Loki, which is wildly entertaining. I gotta say, that's one of my... He also gets to stare at his own butt, which was just blatant fan service.
Which was America's butt.
Yep. And then there's the Space Stone, which goes about as poorly as any plan to steal this thing could have gone. So essentially the plan was to have Ant-Man cause past Iron Man to have some sort of heart attack by messing with his arc reactor, which he still had in his
cardiac arrest.
Yes, while current Iron Man, who's dressed as a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative, steals the case with the Tesseract, because no one would keep an eye on that. Or, anyway. Loki is also there as he's been captured. So as Iron Man is managing to get away with the Tesseract, the Hulk comes bursting out of a stairwell because he couldn't fit on an elevator, knocks Iron Man into a wall, which has no lasting consequences for him. But the Tesseract falls out of the case, lands right at Loki's feet. Loki picks it up and just warps away with it.
I feel like that's like the basis to the Loki TV series we'll get on Disney Plus.
Probably.
That's my theory, because he just vanishes, and that's got to be it.
So in order to get the Tesseract now, Captain America and Iron Man have to go further back in time to the 1970s because they have a limited number of Pym particles to steal both Pym particles and the Tesseract when they were being kept at a U.S. Army base that both Howard Stark, Iron Man's dad, and Hank Pym were working at back during the 70s.
Now, I would like to intersect for a second to just note that this is where we get Stan Lee's cameo, which was the final cameo that we will be getting from Stan Lee. Rest in peace.
Yes, they de-aged him and made him an anti-war... He was a hippie.
Make peace, not war.
Yeah, and it was nice to see, and he was in a car where his license plate was "Nuff said."
Yeah.
So anyway, during this part, nothing major to the plot happens, but we do get some nice emotional moments for Captain America and Iron Man. Iron Man gets to have a heart-to-heart with his dad, and he, sort of admits he's come to understand him a bit better, even if he wasn't the best father. He has, he still remembers him as a good dad, which I really liked, because a lot of Iron Man's story has been sort of coming to terms with who his dad was in terms of who he is now.
And Captain America, while he was traveling through the base, he finally got to see Peggy Carter again, which...
Okay, this scene was weird because it was nice he was sort of watching her, but the way he was pressed up against this window in a dark room. It was completely see-through glass, and she was standing less than a foot away from him, but no one noticed this guy standing in a darkened office staring at her.
Well, I mean, there were blinds, I guess.
There weren't blinds. I was actually checking. The blinds were open. He was completely visible if anyone had looked 90 degrees to the right.
Yeah.
But no one noticed him, even though at one point, one of the people Peggy's talking to does actually look in his direction. I was watching. I saw it a second time, and I was actually watching for this. Someone was looking at him, but no one noticed this weirdo standing in Peggy's office in the dark just watching her.
Honestly, though, I can't really blame Cap, as creepy as it might be, given the fact that you finally got to see somebody that you love that you haven't seen since you've been frozen for so many years. you're more than likely to not really be as inconspicuous, you know?
Yeah, but they managed to get back to the present with the Space Stone, so now they've got the Reality Stone, the Space Stone, the Time Stone, the Mind Stone, and that just leaves the mission to 2014, where everything hit the fan.
Oh, man.
So let's start with the Power Stone, where it's Nebula and War Machine, which is a pairing I never thought I'd see, but ended up really liking.
Yeah, great dynamic.
Yeah, who essentially ambush Peter Quill as he's about to steal the Power Stone, knock him unconscious, and
I'd love to note that when they see Star-Lord is exactly how the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy goes. Like,
Yeah.
shot for shot until
they
he gets
just-
knocked out.
they just replay the beginning of Guardians until they pull away to them watching him, and he's just singing out loud, and they go, so he's an idiot, right? So they knock him out, they steal the Space Stone, and Rhodey manages to get away with it, but not Nebula, because it turns out that Nebula is sort of on this intergalactic Wi-Fi network of some sort, and she has managed to sync up with her past evil self, which has caused Thanos of 2014 to become aware of the plan to steal the stones and undo what he did in the future. So this culminates in Nebula from the future. I'm going to go with good Nebula and evil Nebula. Good Nebula is current Nebula.
It fits.
Yes. So good Nebula gets captured by Thanos, and her mind is probed for, how to get back. And evil Nebula is disguised as good Nebula and sent back to the future. That's my one. So now we've got Thanos aware of the plan. He has a spy on the inside and a plan to travel to the future to take the stones back. So that leaves the Space Stone that was sent to be reclaimed by Black Widow and Hawkeye. So they get there, and they are told by the Red Skull ghost thing. I'm still not entirely sure what he was supposed to be.
I don't think he was dead. I think that he got some kind of transcendence because of the Space Stone, because he was chosen to guard it or something.
Yeah, and anyway, they learn that they have to sacrifice something they love in order to reclaim the stone. And they set it up as, it looks like it's going to be this fight of one of them trying to kill the other to get the stone, but it's in fact a fight between them of them trying to kill themselves so the other doesn't die. Which people pointed out actually kind of breaks the rules, because it's not someone sacrificing what they love to get the stone, it's someone sacrificing themselves so someone doesn't have to Anyway, this ends up culminating with Black Widow going over the edge and dying. And because then they established this, because it was a death to get the Soul Stone, much like Gamora in Infinity War, this death is permanent. This death cannot be undone by re-snapping everyone into existence. She is gone. So Hawkeye returns without Black Widow to the future. So now all the stones are in the future. We're missing Black Widow now. And after the team grieves a bit, Iron Man creates sort of his own Infinity Gauntlet, which...
I'm amazed that he could pull that off, honestly.
I mean, I get he's super smart, but in Infinity War they established that Star Dwarves essentially had to forge a magical gauntlet to contain the power of the Infinity Stones. But Iron Man just does it with nanotech, I guess. Let's just accept that Iron Man is essentially magic at this point.
I assume that given the people that Iron Man's associated with, he's probably studied into, sciences from outer space. Like, he probably studied magic at some point in time, like the science behind it or something.
Let's just accept that the nanites will do whatever we need them to for the plot.
If he was able to create his very own element in Iron Man 2, I mean, I can imagine him building an Infinity Gauntlet.
Okay. So they build their own Infinity Gauntlet. They agree that Hulk should be the one to snap it because apparently most of the radiation that comes from it is gamma, and it would be less likely to hurt him like it hurt Thanos. So he snaps his fingers and everyone comes back. However, during this, Thanos manages to bring his ship into the future with the help of evil Nebula. And as there's this really nice scene of Ant-Man seeing these two birds suddenly appear outside as this hint that everyone's back, the entire facility is bombarded by missiles, and it's just absolutely destroyed.
And at this point in time, the Avengers are trying to keep the gauntlet away from Thanos, who has sicked his minions to go after them, while Ant-Man is trying to rescue some of the Avengers who have been trapped underneath the building and are in the process of almost drowning.
Yes, so during this, we get a fight scene between Thanos and the trinity of Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. And this is probably my favorite fight scene of the movie, because it's one of two major ones. And it's mainly because they're really no match for Thanos. Even all three of them together, Thanos is just whooping them. And after going back in time to Asgard for the events of Thor: The Dark World, Thor actually managed to steal Mjolnir from his past self and bring it into the future as proof that he is still worthy despite his self-doubt, which was a nice scene. I liked it.
It was nice.
So as they're being beaten, as Thor has had his Stormbreaker axe turned against him by Thanos and is about to be killed, Mjolnir comes flying out of nowhere and hits Thanos in the back of the head. And we see it fly back into Captain America's hand.
Now, if you're confused about this, around the time of Age of Ultron, there was this little scene where the Avengers, got around together and they were talking and everything, and Thor put Mjolnir on the table and was like, "Go ahead, everybody, try and see if you're worthy enough to pick up the hammer." Almost everybody could not do it. Even Iron Man used his gauntlet with the rockets and it didn't work. But Captain America, when he grabs it, he's the only person who's able to make it slightly jolt off the table.
Yes.
Thor notices this, meaning he's slightly worthy, almost, but there's something holding him back from being able to hold Mjolnir.
And Ed actually had a good idea of what this might be, what happened between the events of Age of Ultron and Endgame to make Captain America worthy.
Yes, you see, if you've seen Captain America Civil War, then you know that towards the end of the movie, we find out that the Winter Soldier was the person responsible for killing Tony Stark's parents, both his father and his mother. And we also find out that this entire time they've known each other, Captain America has been aware that Winter Soldier had killed Tony's parents, but he refused to let Tony know that he knew what really happened. So my speculation is that because he was holding such a huge secret, one that destroyed their friendship afterwards, that was the one thing that could have possibly been holding Captain America back from being completely worthy. Because aside from that, he's always been completely honest about everything. But that was the one thing holding him back. So I think that since he confessed that to Tony, he was finally worthy to hold the Mjolnir.
Yes, and this is amazing. We see Captain America just whooping Thanos with the hammer, summoning lightning for some reason, even though they've established that Thor's lightning powers and Mjolnir were separate things. Anyway, it was an amazing fight to watch. But even with Mjolnir, Thanos manages to beat them. He chops up Captain America's shield, which is pretty amazing considering what that thing's gone through.
Yeah. But it was predicted.
And Thanos' armies land. There's these massive hordes of Chitauri tanks. The Black Order from the Infinity War, who all got killed, are back because they're from, in the past.
I would like to note, though, the scene, that scene, though, and you like the scene as well, when Captain America just stands up and holds his busted shield, broken as it may be, and he's standing alone by himself against this entire army of Chitauri and everything.
Yeah, it's this massive wide shot of Captain America on his own, just this tiny figure against the army of Thanos, and it's probably my favorite shot in any movie.
It was perfect, man.
Yes. And as Captain America is preparing to die fighting, he gets something over his intercom. And it's Falcon saying, "On your left," as a callback to Winter Soldier, as these magical portals start opening all around the battlefield, and the people that have been brought back, Black Panther, Spider-Man, the Guardians, everyone comes pouring through. We've got an Asgardian army, a Wakandan army, a bunch of mages from Doctor Strange, and it's just massive army comes pouring through to fight off Thanos. And we finally get that line we've been waiting for this entire time. We get Captain America saying, "Avengers assemble." And that is when the giant CGI fight breaks out. Because it's an Avengers movie. They all have to have one.
But this fight scene is amazing. What I love so much about this fight scene, because in other Avengers films, it always feels like no one necessarily has a spotlight when they're fighting. Everybody's in clusters, so it has to show off everybody. But in this fight scene in Endgame, every single iconic hero has their moment. They have their specific scene in this fight scene where they themselves get to just demolish everybody.
Yeah, we also get a nice few scenes. Like we get Spider-Man showing up and Iron Man giving him a hug, and it was nice. I liked it.
It was.
And then we didn't talk about this, but past Gamora, who before she met any of the Guardians, she has now turned against Thanos and has, started fighting against him. And we get the scene of Star-Lord finally seeing her after, learning she died, and he's about to hug her, and she kicks him in the balls. Twice. The first time she missed, the second time she got both of them. And she is just utterly disgusted that this is apparently the man she falls in love with in the future. And it's just...
I love that Nebula said that the option was either him or the tree. And Star-Lord's like, what?
Yeah, it's... Anyway, and we get these amazing fight scenes. We get all the female characters teaming up, including Pepper Potts, who finally has her rescue suit from the comics. And we get to see them fight against Thanos. We get to see Ant-Man and the Wasp trying to fix the quantum portal to send the stones back in time so Thanos can't use them. Thanos manages to destroy the quantum portal and gets the stones when Captain Marvel shows up, literally screaming in through the atmosphere and decimates Thanos' ship. Like, just flies through it a few times and utterly destroys it. She then goes to take on Thanos herself, and she puts up a really great fight. I think one of my favorite parts of it is when he tries to headbutt her, and she just has absolutely no reaction to it.
Though I have to admit, what Thanos did in reaction to that, I thought was pretty clever. Like, he realized that his regular punches weren't doing anything, so he rips the Power Stone from his gauntlet and then punches her with that force which sends her flying backwards. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect him to like pull a stone off and use that power, but when he did that, I was like, okay, that's a nice touch.
Yes, so Thanos now has the Infinity Gauntlet, and Iron Man tries one last gambit to pull it off him. He tackles Thanos' arm, tries to pull it off. Thanos bats him away and snaps again. And nothing happens. Because it turns out Iron Man wasn't trying to pull the gauntlet off him. He was trying to pull the stones off him. And he has now fused the stones into his own suit and snaps.
Right after he says one last time the iconic line we heard at the end of the first movie, I am Iron Man.
So then we get this flash of white, and we start to see Thanos' troops disappear into dust like so many others were in Infinity War, until eventually Thanos himself just dissolves.
Now, I like the way he dissolved. He sat down, and you think he's going to give some kind of a monologue, like, I guess this is the end or something, but no. He just sits there, quietly, and he just, like, he's speechless because he has nothing against what's going to happen as he fades off.
Yeah, he just looks around, he sits down with this defeated look on his face, and just dissolves. He knows there's nothing he can do. He knows he's lost, and that's it. Of course, one of the things in this movie is that using the Infinity Stones takes a toll on the body. Like, Thanos and the Hulk have had their arms pretty much destroyed using them, and they were, Thanos is a super strong being, Hulk also a super strong being. Iron Man is just a human.
Mm-hmm.
And the damage it did to him was irreversible and fatal. We get this nice scene of Pepper and Spider-Man by his side as he passes, and eventually the light on his arc reactor goes out, and that's the end of Tony Stark. That's the end of the battle.
A fitting end, to be honest.
Yeah, he tried so hard to bring peace to the world and failed so many times, but in the end, he managed to stop the greatest evil they could ever go up against. And then we get an epilogue, which is Tony Stark's funeral. We get to see most of the cast of the MCU, including Harley, the kid from Iron Man 3. We see him at the funeral, which I honestly didn't expect. I kind of thought everyone had forgotten about him.
Now, if you don't remember who that kid was, he was the one who was helping Tony Stark in Iron Man 3 when he was having really tough problems with his PTSD and his severe anxiety issues.
Yeah, it was just such a small role. He was kind of being set up as Tony Stark's protege, but then they sort of replaced him with Spider-Man, so I didn't think he'd appear. We get the funeral scene, we get him having one last message to his daughter, and then we have Captain America preparing to go back in time to return the stones and Mjolnir eventually to their place.
And this one I have to talk about because Captain America has always been my favorite Avenger of the MCU. We see him go into the time portal to go back and deliver the stones. And as he goes back, the Avengers are standing there waiting for him. They're doing the countdown, but he's not coming back. Falcon turns around to see an old man sitting on a bench by the lake right near where they're at. And he walks over there to realize that it's Captain America, aged as an old man, sitting there at the bench looking off into the waters and everything. We find out that he went back into the past and delivered the stones. Then he decided to live his life. Go back to the point in time where he was frozen, and after we get this whole epilogue and he hands his shield over to Falcon, letting him take on the role as Captain America from this point in time, we end the movie getting a flashback scene at this old house where we finally get to see Captain America and Agent Carter have that dance that he had wanted ever since the end of the first Avenger.
He went back in time, he married her, they fell in love, and it was... And that's how the movie ends, with them just slow dancing together, finally. And that's when the credits roll. There's no after-credit scene, there's nothing after that. At the very end, there's a sound cue that, you know what, I'm not going to spoil here. I think if you are really into these movies, you should wait till the end of the credits. If you don't really care, you can leave. It's, you know... But I don't think we should spoil that here. I think that's just one thing we should leave.
Yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, marked the end of Avengers Endgame.
And to get on to the actual review part, I loved this movie. There are flaws with it. It's not absolutely perfect, but this is probably my favorite Marvel movie, and that is a hard position to take.
Mm-hmm. I admit, I really did enjoy Avengers Endgame. Out of all the MCU movies out there, the character that I always had a personal connection with was Captain America. You know, I really enjoyed Iron Man, really enjoyed Thor, but it was Captain America himself that really got me invested in the MCU. At one point in time, it even made me very interested in joining the military as well. The patriotism and the do all you can to fight against evil and whatnot. And it was interesting following his story, from being in the past to being in the present, and doing his best to keep up with his morals while dealing with the way government is nowadays and the fact that things aren't what they used to be. And all he had wanted was to go back and have his end. And the fact that Endgame was able to wrap that up, not only that, but the original Trinity's entire ending. We didn't cover it, but Thor, after this whole event, he passes on the title of ruler of New Asgard to Valkyrie, and he takes off with the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it did a great ending for almost everybody. I really wish we didn't have to lose Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
I was really hoping that we got something after Endgame and everything, but
I kind of liked her ending, in that for a few movies now she's been dealing with what she did as, you know, before she was with S.H.I.E.L.D., after she was with S.H.I.E.L.D. and working for Hydra apparently, and her dealing with the guilt and trying to make that right. And I think this ultimate sacrifice was her way of finally making it right. She sacrificed herself for the fate of half the universe.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, as far as Marvel movies go, this was a really great way to wrap up 11 years worth of Marvel movies. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this was a perfect movie. There are plenty of plot holes and parts here and there that don't necessarily make too much sense.
It's the flaw of every movie with time travel, in that no matter how well they think it out, there's always something that takes it apart, because time travel is just such an unruly thing to try to write.
Right. But it's easy to overlook the flaws, given how amazing and how much care was put into Avengers Endgame.
Yes, this is very obviously the end. They kind of hinted at possible future movies, but they weren't doing the entire, set up the next 5 films in the MCU like they've done with past Avengers movies. This is the end.
Yes, there's no talk as of right now who the new roster of Avengers would even be right now.
Yeah.
Right now, the only films that we know are being worked on is Spider-Man Far From Home, the Black Widow movie, and I believe they're working on Black Panther 2 at some point in time.
Yeah, there are plans for Black Panther 2, there are plans for Guardians 3, there's plans for a Shang-Chi movie. But right now, the only one that is actually even in development is is Spider-Man Far From Home, and that's releasing in, 2 months.
Yeah.
Black Widow seems to be next on the docket, but it doesn't even start production until this summer.
Yes. So, all in all, Endgame is a great movie.
Yes.
I would suggest, however, as great as this movie is, and I want everybody to see it immediately, I would hope that you at least watch Infinity War first before watching Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you jump straight into Endgame, it's very easy to overlook Thanos as a very B-list villain. Because Infinity War did the job of really building up Thanos' character, while Endgame is supposed to be dealing with his aftermath.
Yeah.
They're a two-parter kind of thing,
Yeah, they initially announced these movies as Infinity War Part 1 and 2, and then they renamed it because they said it wasn't going to be a 2-part movie. They were both going to be distinct. It's a 2-part movie. It really is. And
it really is.
And while I like both movies, I love both movies, I'd even say, it is a 2-part movie, even if they try to pretend it isn't.
Right. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of today's episode of The Phone Booth. As always, my name is Ed Heitman. Joining me in the studio today is my good friend and co-host, Brian Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Be sure to tune in every Saturday from 1 to 2 here on the Voice of San Joaquin to hear all things related to movies, video games, TV shows, comic books, and anything pop culture related. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.